Here we are at Gameshaven local game store where we see Flesh and Blood players in their natural habitat. Today they're playing Booster Draft, and this video is all about how to survive your first Booster Draft. Booster Draft is a fun, casual and competitive format where you draft a deck of 30 cards from a pool of cards shared with your opponents. It's a great format for new and veteran players alike, as you get to open new cards for your collection, the barrier for entry is low, all you need are 3 packs, and no 2 drafts play out the same. Typically to draft, you sit in pods of 8, and each player has 3 booster packs. At the same time, all players in the pod will open their first pack, and then they will set aside any cold foils and token cards, and then they will choose one of the remaining cards, which will be put face down on the table, and that will be their draft pick. The remaining cards from the pack are then passed to the player on their left. After you pass your remaining cards to the player on your left, you receive the cards from the player on your right. Then you will look at that and you will draft or pick up one more card from this pack and then carry on passing to the player on your left. You will then keep on picking and passing until there are no more cards left to pass. That is the end of pack 1. For your second pack, you open it and you draft it as like the first pack, except this time you pass to your right. While you're drafting your cards, you can't look at the cards that you have drafted already. In a casual, usually nobody cares, but in a competitive or professional setting, you are not allowed to look at the cards that you have drafted while the draft is in progress, except for a 1-minute review period after the second pack. Double-faced cards such as dragons should be drafted carefully. You'll have to put the double-faced card at the bottom of your pile if you do pick it, such that it is not visible to anybody else at the table. You should also make sure that the double-faced card is not visible from the pile of cards you pass to the next player if you don't pick it. The third pack is drafted the same as the first pack. Open it, pick a card and pass to your left, repeating until there are no more cards to choose from. With the 45 cards you have drafted, you will now need to construct a minimum of a 30 card deck around one young hero from the set you have just drafted. You do not need to have opened the young hero, nor the token weapon that they use, to use that hero and weapon. The store or other players should have plenty of heroes and token weapons that you can use. If you try and you cannot make a 30 card deck, you are able to include as many cracked baubles as you need to make a minimum 30 card deck. In some sets, you may be able to add additional cards to your card pool, even if you did not draft them from a pack. These change from set to set. For example, you can always add a Helios Mitra and a Phoenix Flame to valid decks in Uprising. Unless specified on a card, such as it being legendary, you can run as many copies of a card as you drafted in your deck. Congratulations on getting 5 red Rathe Embers. For gameplay, you should always be playing against the players that you drafted with, those in your pod. Each game plays similarly to Blitz. You use a young hero, determine who starts the game. You can then change the equipment, weapons and cards in your 30 card deck with the extra cards you drafted as your sideboard and play as normal. You should then have a fun game and have yourself a winner. Back home now. So every draft set can be very different, and that's part of the appeal of drafting. So these are some evergreen tips that I feel should be applicable no matter what set you're in. In general, you should try and draft early on generic cards rather than committing yourself to a class too early. It's possible that you could find that you're being cut off from that class later on, and if you've committed too much to that class already, then you could be in a bad situation. Speaking of knowing what's open, it helps if you have some idea of what the contents of each booster pack of the set you're drafting are. For example, if you know that the set you're drafting should have 2 Guardian cards, 2 Brute cards, 2 Ninja cards, and 2 Warrior cards, like in Welcome to Rathe Draft, if you end up getting a pack and there are no Ninja cards in it, then you can be very certain that Ninja is being cut by one of the players before you. So in which case, if you're already in Ninja, it might be a good idea to pivot, or if you're in a different class, try and see what's open and you can draft that instead. Try, if you can, to draft a deck rather than just every single pack, just the most powerful card in a vacuum. It really helps if your deck is consistent and acts all together. One example of it would be to, for example, eat your vegetables if you're playing a very resource intensive class like Guardian or Icelander, where you want to have a lot of blue pitches. Sometimes there could be a really good red card that you want, but you're gonna have to take the blue card to make sure that your deck functions and that your deck is actually a built synergistic deck rather than just a pile of cards. Give some priority and consideration to equipment. There's only one equipment slot in each pack, and equipment are basically extra cards that you have in your hand throughout the whole game. So if you do get a chance to get equipment, I would say it's a very good early or first pick. Avoid hate drafting. Hate drafting is when you pick a card that would be really good in someone else's deck. You would never run it in your own deck, but you're picking it just to stop someone else from having it. What this ends up doing is that your deck will be a little bit worse for it, and one other person's deck will be a little bit worse for it. The other 6 people will end up having a better deck because of it, because they're not affected by the hate draft. Instead, what you should do, pick cards that fit best for your deck, because then that will increase the quality of your deck versus everybody else's decks. The only time you should ever hate draft is when you know that every card inside that pack would never go into your deck as is. So in which case it can be any card that you like that you pick, because it will never make the cut anyway, and that will be fairly late into pack 3 anyway, so hate drafting I don't think makes a big impact at that point. Finally, have fun. You know, armories are a great casual environment for people to learn and improve at the game. So if you do feel like you've drafted wrongly, or if something feels like confusing, have a chat with other people at the armory who are more experienced with you. The one thing that's really true about Flesh and Blood players is that they love helping people out. So if you do have any questions, please, do ask away, chat away, make friends and have fun. And with that, you should now know enough to survive and possibly even be dangerous at your next booster draft armory. But what about Flesh and Blood's other limited format, Sealed? Well, first of all, you should subscribe and then click on this video right here to go and learn how to survive your pre-release. See ya!